What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Variant the Podcast. Now, mainly today, we're going to be talking about theories and whatnot for the Snyderverse, so to speak. The new Snyder Cut has been officially confirmed. We're getting it later in 2021. So we're going to rant and give theories again.
And for those of you who are wondering, if you want to hear just purely our thoughts on the actual Snyder Cut released.
We did an episode on that already.
Yes, already done. Way ahead of you. You can actually check that out in the description. So feel free to hit that up as well.
The crazy thing, just getting right into it, is off the bat, we know we recently got the animated movie Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
Right.
Which everyone loved. Like, this movie kind of like blew up the internet, especially for like the comic book world. And a lot of people were comparing it to what possibly Zack Snyder was going to do with his live action movie universe. Because, you know, as we know now with Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, that was very much a down note. Like, it was very much a dark, gritty movie where people were dying every other second. You know, nothing was really happy or light, for the most part at least. And that's kind of where Snyder was going. You know, even hearing him talk in, you know, panels and stuff over the course of his last 2.5 years, saying like, if superheroes were real, you think they wouldn't kill people? Get real, wake up, kids, you know, stuff like that. And he wanted to do that gritty version of like Batman and Superman. So
not my favorite quote from Zack Snyder, by the way.
No, trust me, not mine either. But I will say, if they go this route, this is going to go into my first theory. If they go the route with the Snyderverse, where it's an alternate universe, almost like an Injustice universe, all would be forgiven. Because my biggest gripe with BVS and Justice League and all that stuff, and even Man of Steel to a certain extent, is how dark and like how it was kind of the opposite of what these characters are. Like, Superman is a beacon of hope and stuff like that. And, you know, Man of Steel is a good movie, but, you know, there was a lot of complaints, especially towards the end. And I think a lot of that is just because, you know, Superman, he's supposed to be a certain way. I know we could argue and go in circles forever. I'm not going to get into that. But then you have BVS, where Batman is like mowing people down with Gatling guns and killing. He doesn't really care anymore. And then just the overall tone of that movie was very like a down note. So you know, me being a DC purist in that sense, I'm like, yeah, but you know, these characters, Batman's a dark character, but you know, he still has a moral code. Like, that's the biggest
He's
part.
Not a murderer.
Yeah, that's the biggest part of him. Sure, you know, unless you're talking about an alternate version. Right. So if we're gonna go alternate versions with these characters, I think all is forgiven, and this is perfect, because then it would be like that Injustice style universe. And so much so that, you know, over the past few years, it's even leaked that that's kind of what Snyder wanted to do. Like, to the point where that nightmare sequence in BVS, that's, you know, Superman goes crazy and is in this post-apocalyptic world because Lois died. And that's literally how the beginning of the Injustice video game and comic book series starts off.
Exactly right.
So that would make perfect sense to have a crazy Superman in this universe where the Justice League is trying to bring him back. And then we even know so much that at the end of Justice League Part 2, if that would have happened, Batman dies. And that would be like a huge thing, which again would kind of be like the Justice League Dark movie, where all these major characters are dying and stuff like that. So if they go that route and they spin it to where they're like, this is an alternate reality, so they could use the same actors because they would obviously have to look the same, and they just say this is an alternate reality in the Snyder multiverse. I think that would be perfect, because then for me, and I know probably a lot of other people, you're not worrying about, well, Superman has to be this way,
right?
Batman has to be this way. You could do whatever you want at that point, and then it would just make all the sense in the world as well, because you have the Matt Reeves Batman movie, where that's our Earth Prime Batman, so to speak. That's our main Batman, and then you could even, if you do a Man of Steel 2, kind of course correct a little bit and make that the brighter Superman that everyone wanted. Because I think that Superman, Man of Steel should have been like how Wonder Woman was. That movie,
I agree completely.
The hope and just the amount of love you felt in that movie. Like, that's what Superman is, right? He's like that godlike figure. I think if they could do that tone with Superman next time around, perfect.
Do you think you recast Superman?
No, I think I would keep. I don't think there's anything wrong with Cavill.
I don't either. But you have him play both sides?
Yeah, for sure. I would want him to do both sides.
Because that's where I would fall.
Yeah, I would want him to do both sides.
I would agree with that. But then because you would also have to kind of do a similar thing with Wonder Woman, right? Yep. And arguably even Aquaman.
Yes.
Right? Now you could recast. You can recast, and you can have two different versions. Because at some point you also have to think about how far can you go with those particular actors? How much are they going to want to do?
Yep.
You know, that's a heavy workload. And these are professionals that do other projects as well. So that would be interesting. But I definitely fall into, particularly with Superman, I fall into the same camp where it's just like, I want to see Cavill be Superman as long as possible.
Dude, I kind of feel bad for him in the sense that like those movies didn't take off as much as they did because he was a perfect casting. But like, I don't think, anything bad you have to say about him in those movies or the movies themselves, I don't think that wasn't him.
No.
I think that's on the writing and the direction.
Yep.
Because he's just a good actor in general. We've seen him in the new Mission Impossible. He's great as The Witcher. And he looks just like he is Superman. For me, it's almost like Robert Downey Jr. with Iron Man, where I just associate him. I'm like, oh yeah, hey Clark, how you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't even, when you say direction, I don't even mean just Zack Snyder. For me, I don't even think it was just Zack Snyder. I think Zack Snyder obviously had a tremendous amount of control, especially the longer it went on. But Warner Brothers in general, there's kind of a track record of a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Yes.
So whatever reasons things worked out and things didn't maybe land exactly where you might have hoped or whatever. Because again, there are people that just flat out love the movies, and
for sure,
I know someone who thinks that the Man of Steel is like one of the greatest films ever made. So
it's a good movie, but I wouldn't say the greatest film ever. No. But it is good.
No, not for me either. But yeah, I think that he just kind of landed as Superman as, in my opinion, the perfect person to play Superman and fill the role at just a really rough time where, things were just getting going and then everything got upended in a really relatively short period of time, especially if you're comparing it to that of the MCU.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So, you've got all that going on. But to your point, the alternate universe portion of this, that concept of, okay, we move forward where, Prime is the Batman and whatever direction that starts to lead things.
Right.
And they build off from there. And then Zack Snyder, especially if the Snyder Cut comes out on HBO Max, it's successful. Now you also have a Green Lantern series that's going to be right behind it, as well as some other DC content we know is coming. And you can really start to have some toys in the playground there to play with and to maybe shape to where you have HBO Max is the alternate universe and the cinematic universe, the theatrical releases is the Prime.
That would be really, really interesting, and I think would be really, really smart because it would be a very good spin on what Disney is doing with Disney Plus, because all their stuff is in the same universe.
Yes.
So to be the same but different would be like, okay, we have Earth 2, if we're going to give it names, Earth 2 will be HBO Max, and then Earth Prime will be the theaters, the cinema. I think that would be brilliant.
How about this? How interesting would this be? You build up the alternate universe on this side. You've already got a really solid base laid down, right? You continue to build it on HBO Max. Then you build up the cinematic and you build the stories to where they merge, and it leads to one central event that's around Darkseid on both fronts. Darkseid's actions lead to a collision of the two universes.
So in the sense that means every actor would be doing double duty.
You are, because you have Robert Pattinson as Batman now.
Okay.
So you would have to have different versions of that.
That would be the only one that would be a little tricky, right? Because you could have Cavill do both versions, Gal Gadot, Aquaman.
I think if you did that, you wouldn't be able to do the same person playing. You would have to have a Superman here, Wonder Woman, Batman, and so you know what I mean. So you'd have Affleck Batman, and you'd have Pattinson Batman. You'd have Cavill Superman, and you'd have to cast another Superman. It would be that type of a deal. To where but you would have the same Darkseid. It would be, and you would have tie-ins to where there's continuity that links them, but little Easter eggs throughout that just build. It comes to crescendo to where you finally have this mega event with Darkseid at its core.
And then obviously you have Flash in there explaining why all this craziness is happening.
Exactly right. Or Flash is the one who fixes it in like a Flashpoint movie.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Literally, you could leave it at the end of that movie. He's like, much like the spoilers for Justice League Dark, just like at the end of that movie where Constantine's like, yo, you got to fix this because whatever you do is going to be better than what we got now.
Right.
And then they almost ended in something in that vein, which leads into a tease. Or hear me out. Like literally, they do pull a Flashpoint where he does that. He's running, and like the last 30 seconds of the movie is Flash in the Batcave talking to like to Bruce Wayne in this new reset continuity. That would be dope. So maybe it's still Pattinson at that point, but they just with costumes or whatever, they make him look a little older or more, a little more sophisticated and more aged in years.
What if? I mean, because we've been getting a lot of Dr. Manhattan. We've been getting a lot of Watchmen.
And Snyder did Watchmen.
Exactly right. What if we also see Dr. Manhattan emerge somewhere in this whole thing? You know what I'm saying?
I'm looking at you. I see Doomsday Clock behind your eyes. I see.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The gears are turning. And I'm just like, there is some serious options there.
Well, you just blew the doors open, because if we're gonna go that crazy town. Then you could literally do everything like the CW shows already did in the past, where they already linked everything.
That's
We're
right.
talking like the Titans, Christopher Reeve Superman, Michael Keaton Batman. Like, I say it all the time, give me Val Kilmer Batman, give me George Clooney Batman. In that instance, I want it all.
Yeah.
Like, that would be amazing.
What if that's the thing that gives you what you've always wanted on the big screen, where there's this moment where it all starts to encapsulate and Dr. Manhattan is just...
Could you imagine?
Weaving this giant thing, and you see all of it in just these flashbacks and these quick bursts.
Because I already had like a nerdgasm when they did that on the CW show. Because as you know, I've been preaching that for years. I feel now, and they did it. But to do it now on a cinematic scale,
because you know it would be 10 times that at least.
Like because of the production value, like how because I'm thinking in my head, if done perfectly, I'm thinking the end game, the last sequence in Endgame where Cap is there and you hear on your right and you just see all the portals opening up with Doctor Strange and just everyone but they do that something to that effect, but it's all the versions of Batman, Superman, give me like just all of it.
But and that's kind of exactly what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I have in my head, because it's like it makes a ton of sense. If you look at what the MCU did with Thanos, right? They made him this looming, growing threat.
Yeah.
Right? That just built and built and built and built. And it all centralized with characters that were galaxies and universes apart.
Yeah.
Right? And it brought all of these different characters from all over the universe together into one, including gods, literal gods, right? It just encapsulated, but it all hinged, if you think about it, it all really hinged on 2 characters.
Oh, of course.
Thanos and Doctor Strange.
Towards the end.
Right. To bring it to its head.
Yeah.
Right? Thanos and Doctor Strange. So if you kind of follow that same pattern, you could do the exact same thing in a huge grand scale, to building 2 universes simultaneously with little hints all throughout that build to that peak, that climax with Darkseid, and it all comes together with Darkseid and Dr. Manhattan.
Man, that would be...
With and it clashes and those 2 characters, it all hinges on those 2.
Like, you're talking about like them facing each other, or just them like...
In terms of like how it all comes together and eventually finds an end. So you have the big villain who's trying to do what he's trying to do, and you have this other character that can intervene.
What's interesting about that too, and why I think that could work, is in the New 52 with Darkseid, they portrayed him as like, there really isn't like alternate versions of Darkseid. Like Darkseid was literally jumping from like Earth 2 to Earth Prime. Like there was like the one Darkseid. So you could use that in the movie.
Absolutely.
Same thing. Where
that's why I said same Darkseid.
Right.
Because he's got the mother boxes and the whole thing.
But that would be really, really interesting. And he would be like, it would be cool to have the villain, Darkseid, as like the one constant. But also to see his army on the big screen, like I'm talking about like Granny Goodness and all that stuff. Like I would love, because you would have to at that point. Yeah. If you're going that deep with Darkseid, I would imagine like the big climax would be like, putting him, to a head almost with like the New Gods, and stuff like that. Because I know they're already working on a New Gods movie actually.
Yes, that's true.
Tom King is actually co-writing with the director. So they kind of almost have all their ducks in a row.
The pieces are there.
The puzzle pieces are there. It's just like just snap them together a little bit.
It really does make you wonder: are they already talking about this?
Could you imagine? Because I feel like a lot of fans for the most part, give them a bad rap because it has kind of been a mess. Like that's you just kind of have to. There's no really.
You have to acknowledge it. Yeah.
It's just it has been all over the place. Yeah. Whether you love it or hate it, you can't deny it's been sporadic and it feels like they don't have a plan. But what if they are that evil villain, that mastermind? They're like just it's been hard, and with the box office and losing directors and stuff. But look, we have an idea. We're just trying to get to it.
Just give us one more shot. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely possible. And here's the beauty about comics and about these stories, whether you're talking about DC or Marvel, and arguably DC more so, is there's so much depth in terms of stories and characters and possibilities that there's just what we're talking about. There's two separate directions that you could go there. Both would be awesome.
Yeah.
Right? But that's just two ideas. There are so many different ways that you could go where you could turn something that was initially kind of rough, right? And went down a road that kind of was a little bit challenging and frustrated a lot of fans.
Right.
And you could easily course correct that and turn it into something very positive.
You could, yeah.
Because if you went a route like that where you said, okay, we release the Snyder Cut and we reveal with the Snyder Cut and let's say they turn it into a series, and on the very last episode, they drop a scene in there at the very end, it goes dark, and then something starts to happen, and let's say it's Patterson Batman.
That audience would be like, "What?" Like just a roar in the crowd.
All of us, and you start to blend these to where you let everybody know there's something else here. This is going somewhere.
Much like the MCU did, like
exactly
with these little
right.
Easter eggs.
Exactly right. Or if we even just have like the Green Lantern, they cast the Green Lantern between now and then, which you would have to imagine is going to definitely happen.
For sure.
They cast the Green Lanterns and reveal which Green Lanterns, and they show up at the end.
Crazy.
Right?
Crazy.
Because then you build up, and within maybe 5, 6, 7 years, we have a DC version of the Endgame moment.
I'm sitting here thinking as you're saying that, a thought popped into my head. I'm thinking, like, what if they almost did something where their climax was like the Apocalypse War from the comic books, where it's like the Anti-Monitor versus Darkseid? Because I think it'd be really cool, because in the MCU, they already did all the heroes band together to fight the one bad guy.
Right.
But what if they spin it to where the heroes are banding together to stop the two bad guys from trying to kill each other,
destroy everything?
You know what I mean? So that way it's a little different, and you have kind of two bad. Because another thing is, I've been preaching Flashpoint because that feels like it's the most obvious. But you could also do an Infinite Crisis in the movie universe, in the DCEU, and introduce like a Superboy Prime to like punch reality and screw everything up, or have like the Monitor screw everything up. You can so that DC has plenty of characters where they could just reset things, not just the Flash. Flash makes the most sense because he's already in the universe and stuff. But you could do stuff with Superboy Prime. You could do stuff with like the Monitors.
Could you imagine if things went nuts and Superboy Prime suddenly showed up?
And you already got Superman in this universe. I mean,
my God. People would lose
and he literally
their
punches
crap.
like reality and stuff. And then you see Jason Todd resurrecting from the grave. Let me tell you. If
that happened, let me tell you something. If that happened on the big screen and no one knew it was coming,
oh my God,
DC fans would lose their minds.
I think I just gave myself like goosebumps, like the hair on the back of my neck.
Yes.
Oh
my God.
Because if that came out of left field, where it was literally like an Easter egg, where at the end of the movie, like reality set, however they want to do it, if they want to stick with the Superboy stuff and all that goodness, fine, whatever. But then you just see like a grave, or like in Gotham, right? And the camera's going in slow. You see a hand pop out and someone crawling out.
Like there's an earthquake and the ground cracks.
Yeah, right. And it's almost like real horror movie where like this guy in his like mid-20s is like breathing. He's all dirty. He's, bruised and stuff. And he just kind of collapses there of exhaustion. And before the camera goes to black, you see it go up to the tombstone and it says Jason Todd, black. And everyone's like, oh my. Because then you're setting up for an Under the Red Hood and doing like something with that for Batman. Dude, that would be, everyone knows Batman's my dude. So is Red Hood. That whole universe, that's my ultimate.
For real. And I mean, the bottom line is there are so many opportunities like that.
And there's so many. With comics, like, it's all kind of there for you, right?
Yeah.
Like they already wrote the path. Like you don't have to do it exactly, but the structure and outline is there, where it's like, here's the beginning, middle, and end. Tweak things as you wish. It's just like it's there. It's there. And DC too, going off of that, DC, I would say even more so than Marvel, is known for their resets and reboots. They're like the Crisis publisher, right? Like they're having a crisis like every other year. So it's like, it just makes all the sense in the world to, this is what you guys do. Just reset it and make things right with the movies.
Yes. They can do it. They can do it. The opportunity is there, and whether they go, man, just even the thought of introducing both Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor, it's
Right.
like that would just be crazy.
Because they did
You'd
it-
have so much happening, it would be unreal.
They did it in CW, but imagine we're talking like a $200 million budget. How
Yeah.
dope! Like imagine an Anti-Monitor with the budget
full
they gave for like
tentpole.
Thanos. Dude, and
Yeah.
you get someone of a Josh Brolin caliber to voice him.
Like, what if you have like Darkseid in Snyder's, and you have the Anti-Monitor happening in the Prime area, and the two then clash. Like they realize each other's existence through the mother boxes or something, and that's what leads to the collision.
There's so many possibilities.
Yep.
How do we get in these meetings? How do we get into these Warner Brothers
I don't know.
meetings?
Listen, give us a call.
Yeah, if anyone's listening
All right.
who works for Warner
Listen,
Brothers, could you
Tim
imagine?
_Connolly, Arris _Quinones.
Could you imagine?
There's so much potential. And again, we weren't sure. Nobody was really sure. Zack Snyder himself was not sure that his cut was ever going to see the light of day.
Yeah.
But then, and you know, the fact that it's happening and it's confirmed, they've announced, it really does open up, because a lot of, as you've already said, a lot of his pieces are still in place. So
Well,
now it's just like, well, it could go so many different routes.
They've intentionally, in Aquaman, Shazam,
Yes.
all the movies that came after, like Justice League and stuff, they intentionally, like when we watch the films, we would say it's like they really went out of their way to not, keep it vague. Like even when they showed
Yes.
Superman, like it was like neck down
Yeah.
and stuff, or they would reference some stuff, but it was so vague that it could really go either
Yeah.
way. You know what I mean? Like in Shazam, they did reference like, the Batman exists, Superman exists with the Batarang, but it's like nothing too specific
Yeah.
that they couldn't get away with if they wanted to change something later.
It was like they were acknowledging that the other characters were there, but without doing anything to tie into any or build on any additional
Correct.
storylines or continuity. Which was very smart, because, it was very clear they weren't 100% sure which way this was all going. Because we know now, even with the Snyder Cut, that was not a thing until November.
Yeah.
So that all the other stuff that's happened, all the other
Although
movies.
that's crazy. He knew.
It is.
He knew for a while now.
Well, when the 2 year, when they announced like there's, for the 2 year anniversary.
Oh, where the internet was expecting for something to drop.
Yes.
Right.
That was when he found out.
So he's known for
It was right around that time. So I'm not sure why they didn't announce, what made them choose not to announce on the 2 year anniversary.
well, maybe the fact that HBO Max is going to be released in a few days here. So maybe they announced this on the heels of the release of HBO Max. So I imagine to maybe drive up their subscriptions.
Yeah, because it was weird, right? Because they announced and hinted towards a big announcement coming in November, and then it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? So it had to have been like, they were like, oh, we can do this 2 year anniversary. And then the studio probably stepped in and said, yeah, but it's 2 year anniversary of release the Snyder Cut hashtag, hashtag release Snyder Cut movement. So they're like, for us, this is about, this has to be mutually beneficial.
I imagine someone like running down the hall, like in this big like office going, no, wait. But if we wait till like a week before we launch HBO Max and announce that it's going to be exclusive to HBO Max, we'll get a lot more subscriptions.
Especially because it also landed right at the 2 year or the anniversary rather of Man of Steel.
Yes. Well, that's where he announced it, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah. So it landed right at the anniversary of Man of Steel, which was Zack Snyder's movie that kicked all of his DC films off. Right.
Kicked off the DCU.
And they're launching HBO Max here in the coming days. So it like kind of all lined up. So they probably said, oh, this would be the much smarter way to go. Made a lot more sense. But the point is that even Zack Snyder, like in his cut, none of that was confirmed till really recently. Just in the last 6 months.
That's crazy.
So I have to imagine, if they're seeing a ton of excitement, if they're seeing a really good response in terms of people going on and already subscribing, like you said, you already did. I haven't done it yet. But if they're already seeing that, especially if the money starts rolling in, the gears are going to be turning. So it makes me wonder, are they already considering options? Or if they start seeing the really positive response, will that make them? Because the possibilities, the opportunities are there.
Well, that's the crazy thing. That's I kind of wanted to bring that up next because we know they're releasing this movie or in six part episodes. But once they do, this isn't the end. Like, especially with the die hard like Snyder fans, they're gonna want part 2. They're gonna be like, give them the 150 million, 200 million to shoot part 2. So that's the next one. I feel like this is gonna be a thing where a year or two from now, we're gonna use this clip to be like, remember a year ago where we said there was gonna be a new hashtag or movement? Well, it's happened.
I don't even think there will be a need. Honestly, I do not think that there will be a need for a movement. I think, because think about it. Think about how much money Netflix drops on their original films and series, right? They're dropping $100 million regularly on their original films. So I don't want to make it sound like they're doing it with every film, but they're doing it often. They're dropping a lot of money. Yeah, they put out huge blockbuster tentpole dollar budgets on films and even some of their television series. Yeah. What's the sci-fi series that you're watching?
Witcher?
Not The Witcher. Altered Carbon. Altered Carbon, incredibly expensive. The Marco Polo that they wound up canceling after the second season, which was very, very sad, by the way. Absolutely such a good show. But that was the largest budget for a television show ever and was well into the hundreds of millions. So it's more than doable.
Yeah, it's going to be just, like anything. If people are watching, they're going to put money in. Because that's a crazy thing about bringing back this Snyder Cut. Like, this could have brought it back for good. Because if people like it, or if it's at least, whether they like it or not, if it's getting eyes on it, meaning that's turning into dollars, if they end up making, a few $100 million off of this, of course they're going to fund another one because they'll be like, oh, well, we're just going to let them finish it because clearly people are going to keep signing on or stay signed to the subscription to watch part 2.
And maybe not even just finish it. Expand on it, even alter the part 2 to combine into something bigger and broader, which in my opinion, and I think you'll probably agree with this, that is the direction I hope they go.
Now, at that point, because we know the new Wonder Woman movie is, it got delayed because of everything going on in the world, but that's coming out later this year. Aquaman 2 is, in post or pre-production rather, and so is Shazam 2. Shazam 2 was actually supposed to be already shooting, but that got delayed for craziness, right? But anyway, all these actors, especially like Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa, they would have to be doing like double time, like we were kind of talking about earlier. So that would be crazy in that sense. Like, I feel like Jason Momoa would be down all day long. That, yeah. Like, he'd be like, dude, you'd be like Robert Downey Jr., I'll play Aquaman for life. You know what I mean? Like, that is my character. But I'd be curious to see if people would Ben Affleck come back because now it'd be back in Snyder's hands, right? Because I feel like a big reason why he left is because of how things were received and Snyder kind of left. So I feel like if Snyder was still around, he probably would have stayed. You know what I mean?
I would agree.
So is Ben Affleck, who's like this Oscar winner, A-list actor, going to come back to continue Batman for a few more episodes or films or whatnot? And even Gal Gadot, she's like, she's big time now. You know what I mean? She's not only doing Wonder Woman, that's clearly, her claim to fame, but she's been in the Fast and Furious movies. She's been in a few good comedies and stuff. So
she's primarily Wonder Woman, though.
She is.
That's her bread and butter
for sure. But what I'm saying is now, because she's Wonder Woman, it's allowing her to do almost anything she wants because it's like, hey, that's Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? Just like most of the MCU stars, they start with this this film or franchise, and then it allows them to do anything because they're an A-lister because they played Captain America or Black Panther or what have you.
Certainly opened up opportunities, that's for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, point is, would they be willing to devote that much time to these characters?
My opinion, especially when it comes to Ben Affleck, because he is getting older.
He is
that he would probably be, two things. One, we know for a fact he said on multiple occasions that he always wanted to play Batman.
He did.
Okay. So we know that for a fact. We also know that he was deeply disappointed with the way it turned out. His run as Batman.
Sad Batman, that meme.
Sad Batman.
That meme gift. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yes. He was deeply upset with the way it turned out because then obviously it went on to he was going to write and direct his own Batman films, and then that didn't work out because of creative problems and differences and such. So I honestly think that he would be thrilled to come back under the right circumstances, and if they come to him and say, look, this is the story that we're looking to tell, and they can tell him there's a definitive end for Batman's character. So in other words, you're not going to be playing, we don't need you to play this for the next 10 years.
Well, supposedly, I mean, I guess if you're going by the original Snyder script, if all the rumors are true, Batman dies at the end of Justice League Part 2, right? So I guess, if they were to stick to that, he would only need to come on for part 2, which would be another film, which would be a nice way to at least wrap up Snyder's original vision.
But also perfect if you have that set as an alternate universe, and you have Pattinson Batman as Earth Prime, and the two meet, and when Batfleck dies,
you have the
Pattinson replaces him.
You have
right, and dope. Batfleck feels like it's okay. I can let go because he knows.
You know what this is
Pattinson
like?
Batman is there.
I think you inadvertently just kind of did what they did with Superman in the New 52. Essentially, New 52 Superman died, and then they brought in Earth Prime Superman to replace him, and that's how they fixed that whole continuity issue. Where they're like, this version died, but now we got our original Superman back that everyone wanted by just bringing him back and filling New 52's shoes. So that's kind of would be the same thing.
Yeah.
But again, it's a testament to saying it's like they already do this stuff in the comic books.
Yes.
Just like literally use what you're already doing.
You've got Jeff Johns sitting right there in the film department.
It's crazy. Yeah, he's already worked on like several of the CW shows.
Yes.
He's currently doing Stargirl and stuff. So, but we know he left his chief creative officer position to be a higher up
at the comics side,
in the DC film division.
That's exactly right.
So it's like, what are you doing?
And he just did what as a comic book?
Doomsday Clock.
Doomsday Clock.
Well, he is the guy. I feel like he could be what Filoni is to Star Wars, where he is an encyclopedia of DC lore and knowledge. And he really, Doomsday Clock.
Hallelujah.
Doomsday Clock, you know me. I said it on record several times, as I don't care that Doomsday Clock is not even a year old. It is one of my favorite comic books, especially issue 12 is one of my favorite single issues that come out probably within the last 2 decades. It might even be it is one of my favorite issues of all time already.
Particularly the final issue.
The final issue particularly, yes, because it's all set, but it all builds to the final issue.
Right.
Like it's literally the slowest burn, and once issue 12 hits, it's like, oh my God.
Yes.
He's
the final issue
He's a genius.
Makes all of the issues prior to it genius.
The point to that is because he understands that at the heart of the DC universe, at the heart of it all, is not just Superman because he started it all.
Right.
But more so than that is hope,
hope
and love. And that's what Superman represents, which is why he is at the center of that universe. And you need that kind of person to be running a film division with, these budgets that are millions. Because if you can get a guy to like steer that ship and like translate that to film, you would all the money. Yeah. Because again, just like you look at the world right now, I feel like especially 2020, it is like the year of like crap. And to pump out just content like that gives people hope and optimism, like that's what we need. Like we don't like
Absolutely.
Yes, I love the Justice League Dark movies and that stuff is cool and badass and awesome. But on the flip side of that, I like hope in all that stuff more because just, as humans, we need hope. We need love. Like you need something to strive to be better.
Yep.
So do that, DC. Do that. I'm a big preacher in that, obviously.
Yep.
So please, no matter what route you go, obviously we would love the dark stuff, like we said on the alternate universe. But when you get to the Prime stuff and you're back in that main continuity, give us that hope.
And what an opportunity you have there with Henry Cavill as Superman. There's just so many ways that you can lead it back to that. And Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman movie, proved that point. It proved that point.
Yes.
Because it basically went full rebirth on a cinematic version.
It did.
Right? They just did it with Wonder Woman and not Superman. So, look, because I could not possibly, and we've talked about it a lot of times on the show, but I could not possibly agree with you more. Right now, what we need, we've had so much pessimism in our filmmaking and our storytelling for quite a while now, right? It's been on the darker, more negative slope in terms of popularity for quite a while. With the world is insane currently,
to say the least.
So yes, I would love to see my heart and soul as a storyteller. We talk about all the time is about hope, about telling stories that are meaningful to people and that even on a subconscious level, they resonate in you. And you don't even fully understand why you connect with that story so much until later on when you really start to think about it. Kind of like what we just saw with Dave Filoni when he was explaining the through line for Star Wars.
Dude, that's for a different podcast because we need to talk about that for like a
we
solid 20 minutes.
We definitely will. But in that instance, in the last 7 minutes of the second episode of Disney's Gallery, where they're talking about The Mandalorian, Dave Filoni goes on a 7-minute rant where he explains in the most succinct, brilliant and carefully laid out
He became
summary.
Yoda.
Yeah,
like
Yoda.
He just became Yoda.
Yes, and he breaks down from episode 1, Phantom Menace, all the way through Return of the Jedi, the through line, George Lucas's through line that is all throughout his 6 Star Wars films. And it kind of can be encapsulated in the sentence that he says, which is Star Wars is about family. Right? Now, there's a lot more to it. But the point being is that when you listen to him explain that, there's a part of you that goes, even if you kind of knew it, there's a part of you that goes, oh my God, yes. That's why I've always loved these characters. That's why this Luke Skywalker story, Anakin Skywalker stories meant so much to so many people. And nobody really fully recognized it, right? And I think that is what I think a lot of people are longing for. They just don't know it. But if we get it, if storytellers will give it to us and create those stories, we will see iconic. Harry Potter is another great example of that. There is so much hope and love at the core of Harry Potter's story. And look at how much that resonated with people, right? And I think DC has an opportunity to do something very similar if they go the route that we're talking about.
For sure, yeah. And to that point, as far as I think there's something to be said with that kind of storytelling in general to where there's lots of things you like, right? But I don't think, for the most part, I don't think people analyze it that much. It's like, you like it, but it's like, why do you like it?
Right.
So it's fascinating. Like even something like, Dave Filoni going down, breaking that. Cause I actually grew up and saw the prequels in theaters. Like that was my era of Star Wars because I was the perfect age where, the original 3.
Don't say you were a kid because I was in my 20s.
I was still too young for the original 3. Obviously I love them, but he just explained. So he broke down, he literally had me go oh wow, that is I knew it, but he just said it so eloquently that I'm like, yeah, that was the perfect way to break that down. And to what you were just saying, if they could tell something like that with DC and give it to someone like Jeff Johns, if not Jeff Johns, who understands that and loves the lore of these characters. And it's not, that's another thing that Dave Filoni made a good point. He's he knows that these aren't his characters.
Yes.
He's carrying on a legacy. He says it verbally all the time, that he has a responsibility to uphold the standards of these characters that Lucas created.
That's right.
And I think a lot of times, especially in Hollywood right now, people are like, oh, I got Superman, I can just do whatever the heck I want with him. He's because it's my version of Superman. It's you have a responsibility. You didn't create this character. You do get to do, you're directing or you're producing, whatever. That does give you liberties, obviously, to do what you want. But I feel like you have a certain level of responsibility to keep certain elements of the character in place because that's why the character exists. If you want to do, this, crazy off the wall version of a character, then just do a different character or an alternate version. But if you want to do Batman, you got to do Batman. you know what I'm saying? Not some sideways version, unless you're talking about Earth 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I agree with all that.
I think it's a psychological thing, right? People don't realize there is a psychology to storytelling.
For sure.
But there's also a psychology to what we like and don't like as our entertainment, right? So, and that cuts various ways, but it's the stories that really resonate and are long lasting, that really become meaningful to people, are the ones where at their core, they really touch on just the key aspects, some of the most fundamental aspects of the human experience, right? And that's why, we cite hope, love, things like that, things that people look for and they long for in their lives, right? And they look for that through family and loved ones and all these types of things.
Isn't it funny that like oftentimes the most simplistic of messages are the ones that are most impactful?
Absolutely.
It's always, isn't it funny how that is? Like, just like, think about just like storytelling in general. This is kind of getting in the weeds, but when you think about storytelling in general, like, there's only like a handful of themes. They're all just, you know, interchanged parts. It's kind of like music, right? Like, there's only so many chord progressions, but like you change and add things here and there, and it sounds like a whole different song. You know what I mean? You're not really reinventing the wheel so much.
Sure.
So it's crazy that, like, you know, you could have all these different emotions with, at the core, you know, pretty much the same theme. It's just they put this to the front, move that there, and now it feels a little different. Yeah, you know. So I that's just really interesting to me.
It is, and to the point of, you know, how, you know, it's the simple things. No one did that better than Walt Disney. No one knew that more and understood that more than Walt Disney.
There's a reason why his company ended up buying Star Wars, Marvel, Jim Henson.
But even just his classic films, the films that he was involved in directly, right? There's a reason that those films and those stories have stood the test of time, and they have become some of the most iconic pieces, and they're cartoons, most of them, but some of the most iconic pieces of entertainment ever made. You know, that's gone on to build a literal empire. Right. You know, that people all over the world, it doesn't matter what language they speak, it doesn't, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what religion they're from, you know, whatever, it resonates with them because it speaks. He focused on one thing, one point, and a lot of the time it was about love, family, hope. Right? Those were at the core of his storytelling, but he was very simple. He said, I just want to tell you one thing.
Yeah.
Right? That was his focus. No one knew that better. No one did that better. And look at how much of an impact his stories have had on our cultures around the world.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that even goes as far as his branding, right? I remember I was telling you, I think we were going to a Comic-Con or something. We were waiting for our plane at the airport, and I just listened to a documentary or podcast or whatnot where they broke down why Walt Disney, you know, designed the Mickey logo. Mickey, right? He said it needed to be something simple, easy, and something even like a toddler can draw or recognize. Because when you look at the Mickey logo, it's just 3 circles.
It's 3 circles.
That is all it is. It is 3 circles in a particular pattern that's really easy. You got 1 in the center and, you know, 2 on top, left and right. And it's just like the easiest thing. And when you think about it, it's kind of like that in all design, right?
Yeah.
Like the Nike swoosh. It's the most basic thing, but everyone in the world knows it. It's so fascinating how like the psychology of that stuff works.
It really is. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, we really got into it.
We kind of did.
As you can tell, we're both pretty passionate about storytelling. But you know, at its core, there's just such a tremendous. Just to kind of say it one more time, there's such a tremendous opportunity to do something really cool, and I think that's not, we're not the only ones saying that. You know, I think that's really at the heart of what DC fans have been kind of just banging the table about, just broadly speaking, is like, there's so much you can do here. Yeah, you know what I mean?
You know, I mean, 100%. Being a massive DC fan myself, I think that's exactly what most fans are. I think that's why we get so mad.
Yes.
Right? Because we know the potential. It's almost like you're getting mad at like your kid, right? Where they're flunking in school when you know if they just put effort into it, they could be like on a roll. Yeah. So it's kind of like that. Because we know there's great stories. We know there's a plethora of great creatives and writers out there. It's just put your ducks in a row so we can get it. Because like I don't like to use the word, but sometimes I've said it just feels like laziness.
Yes.
Sometimes we're like, you put Batman on it, it's gonna make $1 billion. Where it's like, yeah, I guess, but like, you really want to take that easy way out? Because if you put Batman on it and then make it that much better or good on top of it, you're talking about like a successful movie to like a franchise that's going to turn into something like the MCU, which is 10 plus years now.
Yeah.
So,
and I agree with you. And this is the last thing I'll say about all of it. But if you because you've got Jeff Johns sitting right there, and he clearly gets it, right? I'm just going back to what you were saying about having a mindset of respecting and knowing the core of the character of who these characters are, these timeless characters that have been around for so long. Because to be fair, it's not just Hollywood that's done it. They've done the same thing in comics.
Oh, for sure.
Where you've had creators come in and go, I have Superman or I have Batman or whatever, I can do whatever I want. And they've kind of, taken the characters in weird directions. So it's happened in comics and in Hollywood. But if they let Jeff Johns come in there and be the Kevin Feige, right? He's not necessarily the filmmaker.
Right.
He's just guiding the stories and keeping it true to who the characters are. And that even goes towards what Zack Snyder was doing, where he says, look, we can just tweak this and we can make that alternate universe, make that clear, and then we can actually bring this all together and we can do something really unique and really fun, very cool, and something that's going to excite the crap out of the fan base. Man, we could be in for something really amazing.
For sure. I think literally, going off that, this is the last thing I'll say too, because we could talk about this
all
forever.
Day.
But yes, I think putting Geoff Johns in that position where he's not necessarily writing and directing all the movies. He's literally, he has the big picture because he's the guy who knows all the DC lore, and he's making sure all the directors and writers and actors are just staying on course to this end goal, because I feel like that's where he shines. Obviously, he's a fantastic comic book writer and stuff, but I feel like more so on the film side of things, like for me personally, from what I've seen, I feel like he shines more as far as in keeping direction and continuity from the comic book. So putting him there, I think could be the best decision that Warner Brothers and DC could
let him oversee the roadmap.
100%.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, Warner Brothers, please.
It's there for the taking. It's there for the taking, and along with it, a whole bunch of money. So,
ooh, and we know that gets them thirsty.
if nothing else gets the attention,
and I think we got to continue, kind of deep diving into like all these theory type things, or things we hope that comes out of comic book lore.
We will definitely do that, and let us know if there's anything particularly you would like to see us talk about or cover on here. We're also going to be hitting up next week. We're going to be taking some questions from you guys, so be looking out for that on our social media, both Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, so where you guys can shoot us some questions that you would like to have us answer, and we'll be picking a handful for us to answer on next week's show as well.
So yeah, and then we'll even give like shout outs and stuff like that. It'll be all that fun stuff.
We'll even say who you are.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So if you're in the witness protection program, just leave your name out. Anonymous.
Nope, but with all that said, that's the perfect note to end today's podcast. So we'll see you guys next time when we talk about all things comics.